Cathars and the Waldensians have been virtually eradicated from Western Europe. With fewer heretics to prosecute, it seems as if the Inquisition might die out altogether. The business of hunting down and punishing witches brings the process back to life with a vengeance by the 14th century.
It is linked to heresy by the concept that in order to gain his powers, the sorcerer must renounce God and his baptism. That is, he must break a contract. And he must pay some kind of homage to the devil in order to get those powers. The devil doesn't give you something for nothing.
The earliest sorcery cases are tainted by politics. In 1307, France is nearly bankrupt after a series of failed wars. Her king, Philip the Fair, becomes envious of the riches and property possessed by the Knights Templar, a powerful and influential order of warrior monks formed during the First Holy Land Crusade. King Philip charges them with sorcery, and over the next 7 years, thousands of Templars throughout Europe are tortured, imprisoned, or burned at the stake.
There are no modern historians who think that the Templars were objectively guilty of what they were accused of sodomy, devil worship, heresy, etc., etc. So I think this is a really cynical manipulation of the process by Philip. It is one of the sort of more chilling examples of how the inquisitorial proceedings could be perverted.
100 years later, fresh from her triumph over the English at Orleans, Joan of Arc is captured and imprisoned by enemies fearful of her growing political power. They hand her over to an ad hoc inquisitorial tribunal, using it as a convenient weapon against her. Joan's accusers insist that the voices she claims as her inspiration are those of the devil, and that her premonitions are witchcraft. She is convicted and dies in fiery agony. This new heresy of diabolical witchcraft seems so dangerous to both inquisitors and secular authorities, it spawns the most notorious and influential how-to manual of them all. Published in 1486, Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, lays out theological support, legal advice, and various techniques for accusing, torturing, and sentencing witches. It lives in infamy as the document that creates the archetypical image of the female witch, and as one of the most overtly woman-hating works in all of world literature.
When a woman thinks alone, she thinks only evil. Since they are feebler in mind and body, it is not surprising they should come more under the spell of witchcraft. All witchcraft comes from a kind of lust, which in women is insatiable. Malleus Maleficarum.
History has proven that one of Malleus Maleficarum's authors, an inquisitor named Heinrich Kramer, had some problems controlling his own insatiable carnal lusts.
In 1485, he was charged with conducting an inquisition in the city of, or region of Innsbruck in what is now Austria. He got himself into a lot of trouble because most of the people he interrogated were women, and what he interrogated them about was mostly their sexual activities.
Alarmed at Kramer's overt sexual obsession, the local bishop orders the inquisitor removed and all his prisoners released.
2 years later, the Malleus Maleficarum comes out. It grows directly, apparently, out of Kramer's frustration with the Innsbruck experience and this furious misogyny that he has.
Over the next 200 years, Malleus Maleficarum becomes a bestseller, going to press in 4 different languages. It is destined to become a major inspiration for the secular, Catholic, and Protestant witch hunters who will terrorize Europe and North America during the 17th and 18th centuries. By the 15th century, with no new policy or vision from the papacy, the Inquisition gradually begins to die out.
For the most part, inquisitions were only active if a particular inquisitor wanted to pursue heresy. If a particular inquisitor wasn't interested, then nothing happened. And so tribunals run out of steam.
When we return, Spain's politically savvy king and pious queen hijacked the Inquisition process and put its awesome power to use against their own people.
The number of people who were burned to death at one time was, even by present-day standards, staggering.
The plight of European Jews during the medieval period has always been a desperate one. Expelled from nation after nation, many eventually settle in Spain from the 4th century onward. Here they prosper, living and working in relative harmony with both Muslims and Christians. But by the end of the 14th century, a series of economic and social upheavals stir up age-old prejudices. In the 1380s and 90s, anti-Jewish riots lead to the burning of synagogues and the massacre of Jews by the thousands. The Spanish government's desperate solution is to order its Jews to leave Spain forever or convert to Christianity. Many choose to leave, but others, weary of the ceaseless persecution, opt to give up the religion of their ancestors in order to stay in Mother Spain.
The mass conversion of Jews in 1391 in Spain was almost unique in Jewish history. Very rarely had so great a number of Jews converted at once, along with their rabbis, along with their wealthy. It left the population of Jews of Spain shrunken.
Due at least in part to their ancient cultural ethics of scholarship and persistent hard work, these new Christians, called conversos, thrive in the decades that follow. As Jews, it had been illegal for them to hold certain jobs or positions in government, but now, as full Christians, opportunities abound.
Very, very early on in the history of the conversions of Jews, we have conversos who are bishops, conversos who are ministers of state, conversos who are leading financiers. We have conversos holding the most prominent positions in Christian society, because that is the advantage of converting. And it is precisely that which, of course, might give rise to objections from other Christians who resent the rise to prominence of these people who were formerly Jews.
Within a few generations, forces within the Spanish Catholic Church begin to charge that these new Christians are secretly practicing the Jewish religion while maintaining a convenient front of Catholicism. This phenomenon, known as Judaizing, has some basis in fact, since certain conversos, though self-proclaimed Christians, do indeed retain certain customs passed down from their ancestors.
The bulk of the so-called Judaizing activity was more cultural than it was a matter of belief. In other words, it was the practice of things that their parents and grandparents had practiced in which they saw nothing particularly wrong with, like lighting Sabbath candles. A lot of them felt there was nothing inherently conflicting with Catholicism to light Sabbath candles.
The conversos' new status as baptized Christians also means that any perception of a backslide into Judaism leaves them open to charges of heresy, and it is this tragic irony that leads to their downfall. With the marriage in 1469 of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, the two most powerful kingdoms on the Spanish peninsula unite. Her Dominican advisors quickly convince Isabella, a devout Catholic, that the problem of secret Judaizing is a mortal threat to the unity of the Spanish nation, and that an inquisition may be the only solution.
If clergy are demanding an inquisition, it is not simply because they are fanatical, but because they know very well that behind them there are many supporters, many of their faithful, who are also conscious of a problem as they perceive it.
King Ferdinand, a wily political schemer, sees that an alliance with the Roman Catholic Church can profit Spain in many ways.
There was probably another agenda on Ferdinand's mind, and that was how